Okay, let's talk, Brandon, about what is next. You've got a lot. You spent a lot of time out in the Southwest. You know the territory. I know what the statements have all said today, which is great. Good for them. But what happens? What to expect this week, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, the SEC leadership could come together and vote on whether to accept both schools into the conference. Of course, that only comes after Oklahoma and Texas apply for membership. That could happen as soon as this week. But I think it'll happen here in the next few weeks. I'm not so sure that they have to rush into it. One thing to kind of keep our eyes on is the drama surrounding all this and the people who are against it and what they have to say. For example, I know Texas A&M's Board of Regents had a scheduled call for 5 p.m. today. That's going to be underway here soon, I guess, to discuss this situation. And again, they're going to meet apparently on Wednesday to discuss everything. And it's like Texas A&M's going to go kicking and screaming up until the last moment. Texas ends up joining the SEC. But outside that, let's see how fast the other conferences move and whether they do move in trying to add other programs. I think here in the long run, though, maybe we're talking more about the potential and possibilities of conferences potentially merging to go head to head with the SEC because the SEC has been the top dog on the block for more than a decade now after the first round of realignment. At this point, you got to start thinking 2, 3 steps ahead. And the steps ahead certainly seems like we're not dealing with super conferences. We're dealing with a whole entity that is kind of outside the NCAA, especially with football. And if that's the road we're going down, why wouldn't you consider making kind of your own super league, kind of like the NFL, where you've got 24 plus teams that you try to put under one umbrella, under the same governance and everything? Because at this point, we're moving that direction. So why wouldn't another conference or two try to get a jump on the SEC when it comes to that?
Brandon, there are a million rumors out there, and we try not to deal in just crazy speculation. But in terms of what's realistic, and I know some of this is guesswork based on people with whom you trust, but what have you heard, ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, or Pac 12, that sounds the most realistic right now?
Well, I think the most realistic thing right now is that the Big 12 schools that are still hanging on, the 8 remaining members, I've talked to several sources within the Big 12, and they've been telling me that we're going to do what's best for our school and we're exploring all options. So, this idea that the statements you're seeing today from the Big 12 of they're a solid front, they're going to do everything in their power to make the conference more uh, in a better position in 4 years, I don't believe that for a second because it's every school for itself at this point, and they're going to be looking at their options. The Big Ten, I don't think that there's a situation there where the Big Ten's going to be very aggressive in trying to add schools. I think it'll be very similar to what the SEC just dealt with over the last year. It took Texas and OU approaching them before they really started discussing that possibility of expansion. I think it might be some of the same lanes that the Big Ten goes. So, for example, if Iowa State or Kansas reach out to them, sure, they'll start thinking about that, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they would add those schools. Of course, another thing to kind of consider here with the Big Ten is they're really big on academics. They don't really accept schools unless you're an AAU accredited university. The only member in that conference right now without that accreditation is Nebraska. So, what schools fit that bill? It's very interesting to watch. And as I discuss more and more about this possibility of maybe some conferences either combined or have some type of agreement, and speaking to that, the big schools, or I should say the big conferences that are really would maybe consider that would actually maybe be the Big Ten and maybe the Pac-12. And if you look across the board, a lot of Pac-12 schools meet that kind of standard that the Big Ten looks at with the academic side. 9 of their members in the Pac-12 are AAU accredited. So could they work something out? I think it would be smart to discuss it, especially if you're the new Pac-12 commissioner, George Kalaifkoff, because they're in a spot now where they're probably not going to be as enticing to some schools to join them. They could maybe go get some leftovers from whatever we end up calling the Big 12 in 2 or 3 years. But when it comes about the long term health of the Pac 12, they are by far in the weakest position right now, and they have to make a big move. And if you're looking at things that make sense, if you want to take a step further beyond what we're seeing right now, go talk to the Big Ten about doing some type of merger or agreement, because your schools, for the vast majority of them, 9 of your schools already meet that AAU accreditation. And I think that would maybe be a bit enticing to the Big Ten, because also, as we remember, the Big Ten and the Pac 12 have a tremendous working relationship already, not only because of the Rose Bowl, but also with governance. Remember, during this whole COVID situation, the pandemic, the Big Ten would do something, and then the Pac 12 would follow along. They were pretty much in lockstep along the way. So there's a great working relationship there. And that's something I wouldn't quite rule out, them working together throughout this whole next line of realignment.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.